Hello everybody, this is Alan and it is time for another review. This is a review of Novaflex's Castell M manual focusing rack. I started this conversation about a week ago, and at that time I made one statement and asked one question. The statement was, this is one of the most amazing pieces of manual photographic equipment I've ever handled. It's an absolutely gorgeous piece of gear, and that hasn't changed. Today I'm going to be showing you why I say that as we use the rail out in nature. The second part was a little more difficult. That was a question, and that question was, who is this rail for? Well, after I get through showing you this rail, I'm going to explain to you who I think it's for. Now, the idea was I was going to come up to this piece of land I occasionally come to that has some very interesting stuff, usually, to photograph. And I was hopeful that I would find some slime molds so that I could get down and dirty with them and see if we could get some really nice close-up stuff. But on my way out here, I saw a patch of purple flowers I've never noticed before. I have no idea what they are, but they're gorgeous. And in them are hundreds of the most gorgeous monarch butterflies you will ever see. So this is not exactly the right subject for manual focus stacking in the field. There's also a lot of bees and other pollinators here, so this would this would have been a great place to bring the insects in flight machine. Maybe I'll bring it back here tomorrow. Anyway, let's get on with today's review. This is a stunning spot, to be sure, and I can't think of a nicer place to sit down and tell you guys about what we're going to be reviewing today. The fact that I am sitting in a chair should strike you as fairly unusual. I normally don't carry chairs around with me, but it's one of the things that's different about manual focus stacking in the field. It's something you need to take your time with, and it's something that is to be enjoyed. It's the process. It's fun, but it's not as fast-paced as the kind of photography I'm used to. A part of macro photography that I really enjoy is the challenge of learning to take good pictures in bad conditions and to shoot on the go and use your experience and skill to capture things when others might just walk past. And that's a big part of macro for me. It's not really a big part of this kind of macro. This is a much more deliberate and thoughtful approach. And what I'm going to do is walk you through the setup, and in the process I'm going to show you some of the things I bring with me when I come out to do a shoot like this. This is very much a case of bringing my studio out into nature, and I'm going to try to get as much control as I would were I shooting this in the studio itself. So I'll try to control the light, the depth of field, the background, my aperture, everything to give me the ideal shot for the prevailing circumstances. Now, we have plenty of sunlight, so I'm going to try to shoot using natural light today. Now, one of the things that you're going to learn about the Castell M that makes it so appealing is that this is a focusing rail that was made to fill a gap. And that gap is in the realm of 2 to 5 times magnification. The kind of magnification that doesn't necessarily need an automated focusing rail and all of the rigmarole that goes into carrying one of those out into nature, but that is also too high magnification to do anything really very useful handheld. So this rail allows you to focus stack accurately, very accurately, at higher magnification. And so before we dig into all of the stuff I brought with me, I'm going to show you the rail that we're going to be using. This is the Novaflex Castell M. It's a focusing rack that is different from any other focusing rail you're ever going to encounter, currently anyway, because it allows you to set the actual step length that the rail moves as you turn this manual control. In other words, you can set a step length with which to focus stack and know that that step length is accurate. Now, I've tested this twice, and my results were identical to the results published by Novaflex, in that step lengths range all the way from 67 microns at about 2x down to a minimum of 18 microns at 5 times, which is a lot of steps. It's a very fine increment to use at 5x. It's actually closer to what I would use at 10x. The rail is designed to be used on a sturdy tripod. It can be attached in several different ways using the Arca Swiss compatible Q-mount rail that they have on the bottom. It's beautiful, machined out of a solid billet of aluminum, and it fits perfectly on any Arca Swiss compatible quick release device. It fits perfectly on my Benro, for example, though this would not be the level of stability I would choose for something like this, especially at higher magnifications. The device is terribly simple, and it is very simple to use, but in a very elegant way. Let me show you a few of the features of it. It is designed to take any of Novaflex's Q-type plates. This is their QPL1. It's a lovely, well-engineered, quick release type plate, and it fits fantastically right onto the QR clamp here. This clamp, by the way, rotates through 90-degree increments so that you can have the fastening knob either at the front, the back, or on either side. I like to have it on the right because that's just the way I'm used to working, but you can position it the way you're happy. Now, there are a couple of features that are very handy. A lot of people will put this rail on a second rail beneath it so that they can do coarse adjustment with the second rail and use this for fine adjustment. Another way you can do that is simply to unlock the carriage, and then you can manually slide the carriage backward and forward along the rail. It moves very easily. Now, when it is locked, obviously it doesn't push. The only way you can move it is by turning the wheel. Now, you'll notice that there is a button, or you might not have noticed, but you soon will. There is a switch right down here inside the cylindrical housing for the mechanics that has a total of 5 settings. The first is setting X, which is when the focus wheel turns freely. Now, this is a very fine pitched lead screw that allows for the full rotation of this knob to only move the carriage a total of 0.8 millimeters, which corresponds to each of these marked increments on the wheel only being 10 microns of movement of the rail. If you were using it in the X mode, you would advance the rail by looking at the numbers on the wheel. You would decide exactly what kind of increment you wanted to use, and then you would advance the wheel to the next increment and so on. Which reminds me to tell you something. One of the tips I'm going to give you later is at no time ever should you move the wheel backwards while you're doing a focus stack. Once you start the focus stack, keep moving forwards. If you overshoot, just leave it, keep going. The problem is, of course, if you move backwards, then whatever backlash is in the system, and all mechanical systems do have backlash, will be stored, and when you go to move the next increment, it will the backlash will affect the step, making it much shorter than you want. So you'll move it increment by increment this way if you were using the X mode. All the other modes give you an automatic stop after a given move. So at 2X, the rail will move 67 microns and then stop, and you'll feel a positive click as the detent is hit. This allows you to take steps at 2 times magnification, presuming you're using an aperture of f4 and a full frame camera. That will change if your settings change, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So at 2 to 1 or at 2x, your step length is 67 microns per step. That drops to 38 at 3 to 1. At 4 to 1, it drops all the way to 24 microns per step. And if you have it set on 5, the minimum setting, each click of the wheel is only 18 microns. 18 microns is a lot less increment than you need at 5 times magnification. I think that most of us would probably shoot around 24, 25 microns, which is great, but it doesn't hurt. In fact, in some situations, it helps. So having more steps than you need is not a problem. Having fewer steps than you need is a major problem. So this overcomes that possibility. So let's set this up and take a shot and see how it works. What I am going to do is select one of these purple flowers. Now, I say this rail is designed for use with these lenses that give you options from 2.5 to 5 times magnification. I actually don't have one of those lenses with me. I'm going to be shooting with Nikon's MC105 mirrorless macro lens, which is just a stupendously sharp lens and a lot of fun to use. So I'll only be shooting at 1 to 1, but I am going to use the rail as if I were shooting at 2 to 1. I'll just move it 2 clicks per shot rather than just the 1. That's another way that you can do it. But that will let me show you all the setup and how it's done. But before we do that, let me show you a couple of the other features. I didn't show you what was on the bottom of this thing. It's worth looking at. You have several set screws that are embedded in the aluminum to prevent the carriage from coming off or damaging anything. So it will stop when it can't go any further. The rail provides you with 2 attachment points, a 1/4 inch and a 3/8 inch attachment for a tripod screw. I prefer using the Arca Swiss Dovetail personally. It's just, it feels like a more stable and solid mount. I actually mount the rail fairly far forward, just like I did with the automated rail, the Castell Micro. By the way, this looks and feels much like the Micro, and we're going to come back to this in a little bit, but it's one of the attractions of this system is that it's very obviously part of the bigger Castell system, part of the bigger Novaflex system for that matter. And I can see why Novaflex users get a bit spoiled, because this thing is beautiful and it feels beautiful, looks beautiful. The design is second to none. Let's go ahead and load a camera on it, see what it can do. So some of you may remember that on Tuesday when I was talking about the rail, I noticed that the plate that normally can turn through 360 degrees to allow you to mount your camera differently wasn't turning. It was locked in place even when I removed the screw. And I mentioned it briefly and thought nothing more of it, thinking that the rail could have been dropped or damaged in transit, something like that. It wasn't a big deal. There are other ways to mount the camera using the QR plate they provide, for example. So I didn't think anything more of it. That was on Tuesday. On Friday afternoon, I received a new mount, and I hadn't called Novaflex. Novaflex had seen the video and had sent a replacement part. And in addition, they'd sent a riser that I'm now going to, the Plati M, I think it's called. And that was sent as well because I had also mentioned that my D850 was banging into the motor on the Castell Micro. And they showed me that there was a solution for that as well and sent the plate. So there's not a lot of ways that you can quantify that kind of service other than to just recognize that that's pretty amazing, especially in this day and age. So otherwise, I would have had to go back to the house and come up with another bracket for my camera or not finish this video. So fortunately, because of quick thinking Novaflex, we don't have to do that. So this is the camera now mounted, and the feel of the wheel is absolutely unchanged. It's as if there is no weight on it at all. So what we're going to do is set up a shot, and as a prelude to that, I'm going to show you some of the stuff I bring with me for a shoot like this that I normally don't carry in my bag. So you're probably already familiar with most of the stuff that I would carry with me. I never go out, I never go out, period, without some flash. And I will usually bring 2 MF12s and all the attachment hardware in the event that I need to use flash. And don't forget, you're going to need a trigger with that. So I'll throw a couple of flashes and 1 flash for my backdrop, though I will seldom use it. I always have it with me, just in case, just to be on the safe side. So there's the flash, a strap that I will never use, a blower that I will always use. I take a lot more batteries than I think I'm going to need, because you can be out here for a while. A must-have, something that I seldom take out of the house, is a shutter release for your camera. You know that for every step, for every photograph you take, you're going to have to touch the rig. And that is not something that you want to be doing, but you have to do it. So that doesn't mean, though, that it's okay to touch it twice. So there's an agapostomen bee, just join the butterflies. But anyway, having one of these means you don't have to excessively touch the rig. In fact, you don't have to touch the camera at all once you get it set up. So you'll need that. The rest of the stuff is interesting because I'm trying to control pretty much everything out here. I carry things that normally would be less commonly found in my bag. I carry gels, but I only carry 2. I carry a cooling gel and a warming gel, and I have several pieces of these, and I use them to just tape over my flash in the event that I want to warm or cool the environment for the shot. I carry several of them because these are cheap. I just use cellophane, wrapping cellophane. I love these colors, they work really well. Everything else is crammed into this go bag that I have. I carry cards, which I use both as bounce cards for getting light on my subject, as well as backdrops. I also use them because I've cut them halfway through like this with a razor blade. I use them for mounting a backdrop too. I'll just stick a backdrop on here with a piece of double-sided tape and put it behind my subject. Don't use them that often, but use them occasionally. I also, for completeness sake, try to carry with me at least 1 piece of black velvet for a black backdrop, 1 piece of white foam that I use for a white backdrop, as well as various flags and bounce cards, and 1 black trifold that I use for dark background stuff. Probably one of the more unusual selections in here is a piece of brown paper. Never go anywhere without it. It actually makes for a great backdrop in some settings. And then I have a selection of tissue paper. Now I get this stuff online. It's dirt cheap, but there are certain colors. Now I don't get the fancy colors. I get the really cheap ones that have kind of washed out looking colors in them because they make such good backdrops. I have several different skies, I have a white and a black, and then for foliage and background, greens of various different types. And this stuff is so cheap and so easy to use. I'll take out a whole wad of it like this, and we'll tear pieces and just stick one on to another to make it look interesting. And in 2 minutes you can make an interesting backdrop. Probably won't use this today because I've already got such an interesting background. We'll just stick with what we've got. So that's really it. There's nothing else in here that's unusual, and a lot of this is going to be in my bag anyway. This packet isn't, but I'll have pieces of background material. But this is specifically for focus stacking in the field that I'll use this. So let's set up a shot, and we'll just pick something easy. Now, the reason we do focus stacking, of course, is when you have the camera set up to give you a really nice out of focus background, you don't have enough depth of field to get a photograph of what you're looking for. You can only see a tiny amount of it. So what we do is we take multiple pictures at incremental steps through the subject and then put them together in a program like Zerine or Helicon afterwards, and get one picture where the background stays out of focus, but the foreground is in sharp focus because you have all of these pictures married together in the software. And that's what this rail does, is it allows us to keep everything still except for the moves, the incremental moves between shots. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a system that keeps your camera absolutely still and the subject absolutely still. This is not a butterfly shooting setup. This is for things that aren't moving: mushrooms, slime molds, flowers, stationary objects that you'd find out in nature that you'd want to photograph, but you need more depth of field. And that's surprisingly large selection of things that you can use. So let's go ahead and pick one of these little purple flowers, and I'll show you what I do to stabilize it so that it doesn't blow around, because there is some breeze out here today. And in case a butterfly lands on it, well, if a butterfly lands on it, we're sunk. We'll have to start over. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because there must be 100 of them right now. I'm going to reposition the tripod so it's close to the ground so that you can see exactly what I'm doing, because we're going to be close to the ground too. I think of all the flowers that I see around here, this is the most interesting. And it looks like we ought to have a pretty decent background for it just the way it is. I would like to have some of the yellow looking flowers in there as well. Well, I can if I shoot in this direction. So first things first is I want to make sure that I can stabilize this before I go setting up the camera. So it doesn't look like it's going to need much, but it is still wobbling a bit. What I'll do is I'll just put my spike in all the way down to the ground, and then I'll try not to actually clamp the flower itself. What I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm pushing it into the holly leaf right behind it, or whatever that spiky thing is. And just by doing that, it's stabilized out. I don't see any movement in it now. Well, until I move that. It looks pretty solid. I don't think I'm going to need this at all, though I might use it to hold that back out of the way. Yeah, and that holds the other one down flat. Okay, and that leaves an interesting arrangement. Okay, so next thing then is to bring my camera in. Now, I want to flatten the camera out. I want to get closer to the ground. Fortunately, I have a tripod that will let me do that, but I have to remove the center post from the bottom. Now, that is still not quite low enough, is it? So let's see if I can lower what's left of the center post. This would probably be a case for using either a tripod that I could invert the rail underneath, or using a solid base like a platypod or something of that nature. But for the time being, we'll just shoot at a downward angle rather than changing everything at this point. I may look for something a little higher up, but for now we're just going to use what we've got here. I'm going to level the camera out, and then I'm going to drop the angle of the rail. and reposition the camera so we should be focused close to the minimum focus distance. I'll turn my camera on. Once you get the approximate positioning set up, take a look at your subject, and now is when you'll see whether it's really still or not. I would aim for using a fairly open aperture, probably 4.5 will be fine, and I would also set my shutter speed as low as I need it to be to get a good exposure. I don't care about the shutter being open for a while, providing that the subject is still. I was shooting with this camera last night with flash, so it's at 200 right now. We want to put the shutter speed down to get our histogram nicely centered, so it's probably going to be about 60. 1/60th of a second should be fine. So I'll use the focus ring on the camera. Oh dear, there's another bumblebee. But I'll back the focus off till I'm in front of the subject. So we're out of focus in front. I'll take a picture to show you what I mean. You'll see a bumblebee in this one. Now he's left and another one has come. All right, well, I guess we're just gonna have to make do for right now. Leveling out my horizon with my tripod head and reframing the flowers. Okay, so we've backed off, and now I'm not going to touch the focus ring on the camera anymore. In fact, I'm not going to touch any settings on the camera anymore. It is quite an undertaking to come out into nature to do this. So I don't do this for a single shot. I mean, I will plan ahead. And it reminds me, one of the tips I would give anybody planning on doing this is definitely, if you can, scout ahead to find an area that has the subjects you're looking for, so that you don't have to do that on the day. You want to get out and start shooting. So now, let me show you what we're going to do with the settings. The rail can stay locked because I've got us just short of focus. I'm going to use the rail to move us to the first shot. Now what I'll do is I'll calculate the step length that I want to use. We're at the minimum focus distance of 1 to 1. A reasonable step length would be, gosh, the depth of field's probably about 1 millimeter at f8. So at f4, what am I, 4.5, we're probably looking at something closer to 250 microns, but I am actually going to use an even shorter step than that, just to be on the safe side. Now, it's not going to be short enough that any of these increments are going to hit it, but if I set the rail to 2, that's 2 to 1, then skip every other step. That'll get me right at about 130, which is the step length that I think I want to use. So that is all there is to the setup. Now, remember what I said about not moving the rail backwards. Once we start moving it forwards, that's it. We go all the way through. So I'll turn on the live view, I'll look at it, and there's a bee on there. Oh no, that was from the last shot. Okay, so what I'll do is I will gradually, one step at a time, creep up on the subject. And when I feel like I'm just shy of hitting focus, which is about there, I'll take a picture to show you. When I'm just shy of hitting focus, I will start taking pictures. Now, instead of moving every increment, I'll be moving every 2, but until I get the first picture, I'll move in single increments. So still nothing in focus, still nothing. Maybe a couple of things. Now, a couple of other pointers that are worth mentioning here. Don't get up and walk around when you're doing this. Stay still. This ground vibrates just like the ground under your house. And another thing, don't dally. Once you start, keep a rhythm going. So you see I'm going click, click, shot, click, click, shot. Keep assessing the subject and looking for movement. If you see it, you have a choice. You can wait for it to pass and keep going, or you can quit and start over. I have a very low threshold for just stopping the stack and starting over. Okay, I think we're just about through it now. At least we're through the front of the nearest flower. Lastly, let me give you a few tips. These are things I have discovered in doing this, and they're things that I think will make your pictures better, make the experience a little more fun. Number one, once you start, don't backtrack. Keep going forward. Number two, make sure that your base, your tripod, is as solid as you can make it. Use sandbags if you have to. Number three, watch the light. If the light changes like it's been doing this afternoon, make the decision to abort the run quickly. Don't finish a lot of runs when the light is actively changing. You'll waste those stacks and you'll waste that light. Go ahead and stop and start over when you think the light's going to be more stable. Start your stack early, finish your stack late. Be sure to get all the shots in. That's one thing that I emphasize using an automated rail, but it's no different with a manual rail. Take more shots than you need. Get an out of focus shot in front and an out of shot behind, and you'll be sure you've got the whole subject in focus. When you get to the end of a stack, put your hand in front of the camera and shoot a black frame. I do this whenever I'm focus stacking, but in the field doing manual stuff, if you don't want to get your stacks mixed up, do that. Put a black frame in between every stack. I could sit out here all day and just look at these butterflies and bees just doing their thing. So now, with almost everything said about focus stacking manually in the field with a rail, we're left with the question that we started with, and that is, who is this rail for? Well, it's different people. The first group are the people who simply do not like compromises. The people who purchase only the best of whatever it is they're using, whether that's shaving soap or shoes or cars or photographic equipment. Those people will see this rail and there won't be an alternative to it. There isn't an alternative to it. There isn't anything this nice out there. So it is the best of the best. And for some people, that is all it's going to be. So there is a small group of people that fit that description, I think. We can expand the ranks of that first group by adding in the members of the group that have already bought in to the whole concept of the NovaFlex system of photographic equipment. Those people have, by virtue of experience with some of the equipment, become convinced that it really is of value to have equipment that is made to be part of a system. And that is the nature of NovaFlex equipment. Every piece is made from the ground up to fit into the overall system that they have. It all works together. This rail works as well with the Castball bellows system, as well as all their bellows, come to think of it, their extension rails, their plates, everything works with this rail. So for those people who already have invested in much of the system, this is also a no-brainer. This rail is also for people who are already in the NovaFlex system. They have maybe one of the older Q rails and are thoroughly enjoying it, use it plenty, but would like a little more functionality, maybe like to try some of the higher magnification stuff, but aren't quite ready to invest in an automated rail. This is also for those people. This will make a lovely bridge to the more expensive automated rail in the future. A third distinct group is that group of individuals who own either an MPE 65 and or a Laowa 2.5 to 5 times magnification super macro lens. If you own either of those lenses and you don't own a good rail, you're probably leaving a lot of the capability of that lens on the table. Now, a lot of people have those lenses, but don't have a way to use them above about 2.5 times magnification, because handheld, they become virtually impossible to use. And add to that the fact that most people don't want to lug an automatic rail out into the field unless they have something like the Castell Micro. But for those of us who are still using stack shots and WeMacros, fantastic rails though they are, they become a little cumbersome and difficult to use in the field, and I think a lot of us avoid that. But this particular rail is so small and so light and so compact. It only weighs 1.5 pounds. 1.5 pounds is nothing, and it goes in the camera bag and hardly adds to the weight at all. To be able to pull that out, stick it on the tripod, and then use the full capability of the MPE 65 or the Laowa lens is a definite advantage. Now, I don't own either of those lenses, and until I do, this will be a theoretical thing, but I cannot help but believe that when a rail has been specifically engineered to use with those lenses, that it will add a real advantage, and something that I'd be very surprised if I didn't agree with. So I'm going to add those people to the list as well. Owners of the MPE 65 and Laowa 2.5 to 5 ought to seriously consider adding this. It is the only rail out there that has been designed for use with those lenses. Another group who should own this rail is the person who loves macro photography for the process, for getting out in nature and doing the thing that we call macro photography. It's not about the pictures. They're nice. They look good on the wall, but that's not what it's about. It's about the macro photography. If you're process oriented and you enjoy using good equipment in beautiful surroundings, get this rail. It'll suit you down to the ground. Now, what about everybody else? I can only speak for myself, but in asking myself the same question I asked about the micro, which was, is this rail a good value for me today? I had to do a little bit of searching, and I looked back at my rails, my history with rails. And I was amazed to discover that I have a total of 16 focusing rails, not automatic focusing rails and not homemade ones. I have 16 rails that I have bought in my lifetime. They range in price from a low of about $15 to a high of about $250. They are pretty rubbish, most of them, and a couple of the good ones, like the Nisi, which was a rail I really liked, is good, but it has very limited function at higher magnification. But then I looked a little bit beyond the price I'd paid for the rails, and I looked at how much time I had spent researching rails in order to make these 15 decisions. Well, some of them were impulse buys, sure, but others took me days of reading and researching and watching videos and talking to other people. And even if I value my time very, very low, like YouTuber low, and I added up the cost of the rails that I currently own and included the time it took for me to make those decisions and make those purchases, I have spent over $3,000 on 15 rails, none of which I use anymore. I know for a fact that if I had bought this rail as my first rail, two things. First, I would have been divorced, And second, I would never have bought another manual rail. It's as simple as that. But I went on to spend at least $3,000, probably twice that, in buying a bunch of junk because I wanted to save some money. So let me ask the question, who is this rail for, in a slightly different way. Let me ask, who is this rail not for? This rail is not for the person who enjoys researching rails and likes to spend days watching videos, reading articles, and arriving at the best decision. This rail is not for people who like fixing broken rails, because you will have plenty of that with the kind of rails that I have. You get to fix them all the time. It's great fun. Another person who probably won't need this rail is the person who will DIY their own pacemaker if they ever need to have one. This is not a DIY rail. This is already made and it already works. The only other people that I can think of that really do not need this rail are people who don't do photography. They would have no use for this rail. Some of them might find it to be a delightful desk ornament, but yeah, let's just rule those people out right away. So non-photographers would not need to buy this, which just leaves me, really. So unless you consider yourself to be in the category of non-photographer or me, you're probably safe to say that this would be a buy that you would never regret. And if you are lucky enough to be at the very beginning of your experience in buying rails, you should make this your first rail. Because if you do, it will be your only rail. You're going to save about $2,400 in rubbish rails that you'll buy over the next 10 years. It's really that simple. Do this. If you're in the market for a rail, make your decision now. And if you decide to get this rail, you can thank me now. If you decide instead to try some other rails first, I want you to remember this video, and I want you to thank me in 10 years when you buy this, because it'll still be just as good as it is today. You'll be much poorer, may not be able to afford a stamp, but you can send me a thank you note anyway. Does that sound fair? Sounds a bit cruel, actually. The Novaflex Castell M is probably the best manual rail in the world. It is accurate, it is beautiful, it is solid, it is well made, and it's made by a company that is going to stand behind its products. I think that this would be the very definition of a safe bet when it comes to buying photographic equipment. And if you are not sure whether or not a manual rail is something that fits into your style of macro photography, I would suggest that you consider trying it. This is not typical macro photography. This is a different, slower paced, very relaxing, enjoyable, and demanding way to take photographs. And without a rail like this, it's really not possible. Somebody is going to ask me, why did I not test this rail in the studio? Well, I did. But the reason I didn't show the tests in the studio is because I don't really think this rail is designed as a studio rail. But having done the tests that resulted in the pictures that you're getting ready to see, I decided that this actually would make about the perfect manual rail in the studio. It really does allow you to get into the 3 and 4 and 5 times magnification that is just about impossible with any of the commercially available rails on the market. Even when you take a good rail like the Nisi and add indexing to it, like we did in a previous video, it's still very hit and miss. This is very hit and hit. You are getting the right step length every time. So I'm going to expand my list of people that I think could really benefit from this rail to anybody who wants the best possible macro rail that is manual, is not ready to get into a really expensive mechanized rail, but wants the best that there is and wants to get to 5 times magnification and produce the kind of photographs that I'm getting ready to show you. If you fall in that category, you also need to think seriously about this rail. There's nothing out there like it. Not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. If you have the time and the patience to use this rail manually in the studio, you will get results as good as I will get with any other kind of rail, mechanized or not. It is perfectly up to the task, and it can get you accurate step lengths at 5 and probably 6 times magnification. So yeah, think about that too. It's not just an outdoor rail. Anyway, enjoy these pictures. There are a couple of outtakes at the end of the video you might want to stick around to watch, or you might not. That's up to you. Enjoy the pictures. If you consider time to be money and you value your time, say at $1,000 an hour, then you've just blown about $500 watching this video. And it's probably time you cut your losses, bought this rail and was done with it. You'll only be $100 over budget. If you don't have time to look at various knockoff rails from all over the world to find the one that has most of the qualities that you're looking for, if that is a waste of your time, then just get the best right away. There is no doubt which one is the best. Just get it and be done with it, because you're going to get it in the end. That didn't sound right, did it?